again on something that's driving Democrats and liberals crazy. We'll play you the tape as the special edition of Hannity continues. Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. President Trump doubling down on calling MS-13 gang members animals. Watch.
Everybody knows what's going on. These are vicious killers, and they shouldn't be allowed into the country. The laws are horrible. We're bringing them out by the thousands. As you know, we're setting records. This is a record that I don't even like talking about it because it's so ridiculous. They shouldn't be in the country. But we are doing, from the standpoint of law enforcement, a great job. The Democrats are sticking up for MS-13. You heard Nancy Pelosi the other day, trying to find all sorts of reasons why they should be able to stay. These are stone-cold killers, vicious killers.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have left this evening. Thanks for being with us. And don't forget, you can buy my book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, and I'll be back here tomorrow night filling in for Sean. Laura Ingraham is live next.
Great show, Judge Janine. Thanks so much. And good evening from Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle, another day of breathtaking, fast-paced developments from here to the other side of the globe. And we've got all the angles covered for you. The big breaking news, just as the media gleefully reported the demise of the North Korean summit, it looks like Trump may be in the midst of a diplomatic coup. Plus, the FBI and the DOJ are finally forced to tell lawmakers some of the secrets of the deep state's Russia probe. Our experts tell us what to expect from this breakthrough. And the NFL is unveiling this new national anthem policy for players. As some resist, President Trump schools them on patriotism. Also, CNN's town hall with Nancy Pelosi, that was a Mongo backfire. She's peppered with all these questions about crumbs, her age, and her obsession with Russia. You will not want to miss this. But first, the real summit embarrassment. Media reaction to President Trump's canceling the North Korean summit mirrored the reaction to the announcement of the summit. It was scorn and derision. Well, to them, a loss for the president is more important than a success for America, or even for world peace. Back on March 8th, when President Trump first delivered news of the summit with Kim Jong-un, the left and the media were in shock. How could Trump, of all people, suddenly have a shot at forging peace with this communist dictatorship, maybe even force it to denuclearize when all of these other presidents had failed? After Trump's war of words with Little Rocket Man, which Dems warned could usher in a nuclear war, the sudden prospect of peace was frankly just more than they could stand. And somehow they said it was dangerous.
The State Department, our closest allies, I'm sure people on the Hill, nobody knew about this. Donald Trump just decided to play reality TV show president to change the headline.
This is having Trump and Kim Jong-un, when both are known to be volatile. You don't know who's going to try to be the big man in that room. It injects a risk of literally nuclear proportions.
It has been the dream of North Korean leaders for decades now that they would advance their missile programs and their nuclear programs so much so that the United States would be forced to acknowledge them as an equal. I don't know whether or not the administration intended it to be that kind of a gift.
Jeffrey Lewis is an expert in nonproliferation, and he wrote today that Donald Trump agreeing to meet with Kim Jong-un is like, quote, Richard Nixon going to China, but if Nixon were a moron.
Well, speaking of morons, this crowd and the prospect of a summit to them was not only dangerous, but the president was a fool for engaging the North Koreans at all. And now they're shifting narratives again. The same chain of fools is saying that the cancellation of the summit is what's really perilous itself, and that Trump's impetuous diplomacy and inexperience, of course, are at fault. The headline in the Washington Post screamed, Trump impulsively blows up the North Korea summit. The editorial board blamed Trump for what it called a hasty, strategy-free improvisation that has characterized his handling of the diplomatic opening all along. The Post warned, never has such chaos attended the public behavior of a U.S. president on a matter of such gravity. Oh, and here's how the Trump-hating cable news outlets reacted.
For the president to have raised expectations to the point to say, listen, I'm in charge here, I got it, we can sit down, I'm going to work this out, was a little unrealistic.
The art of diplomacy is a lot harder than the art of the deal.
Does the administration actually have a long-term game plan here?
I think a lot of people probably are secretly relieved.
That's
certainly among
secretly.
the
I don't think it's a secret. I think there's a lot of relief.
Let's go to Peter Alexander, who's live at the White House.
Yeah.
Peter, this is a huge wow for us.
Wait, did you catch that? A wow for us bit? Well, at least Stephanie Ruhle is kind of implicitly admitting that the media do not exist to report on Trump, but to revel in his perceived missteps. That's a wow for us. Oh, my gosh. These people haven't been this happy since they thought Oprah would run for president. They're thrilled today. Well, Trump is damned if he does. He's damned if he doesn't. We all know that. But might I offer another possibility here? Trump's retreat from the summit might have been a grand negotiating tactic, not an admission of failure at all. It might have been a way of testing Kim's seriousness and squeezing maybe a few more concessions from him. The president has already gotten Little Rocket Man to hand over the American hostages, and they've allegedly detonated that nuclear testing facility, although that might not be as big a story as we hoped. The AP is reporting that the North violated its pledge to allow these international inspectors to monitor the supposed implosion. But this was part of the reason Trump backed away from the summit table. The North Korean dictator had also bristled at talk of denuclearizing his country, and that is a non-negotiable for Trump. We also learned that North Korean officials never showed up for preliminary talks in Singapore last week. That was a surprise. But if you read the president's letter today, he clearly left the door open to a peace deal and tells Kim, look, if you change your mind having to do with this important summit, please do not hesitate to call me or write. It's like a pen pal. I love that. By pulling the plug on the summit, the president may well have applied the needed pressure. And that tough stance, along with continued economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation, may ultimately convince Kim Jong-un to actually make a serious deal. There are now signs that the Trump strategy could be working. North Korea's vice foreign minister, in a statement tonight, says, our goal and will to do everything for peace and stability of the Korean Peninsula and mankind remains unchanged. We're always willing to give time and opportunity to us to side with a big and open mind. We express our intent that there is a willingness to sit at any time and any way to resolve issues. Of course, the North Koreans are still ruling out total denuclearization. It's not really surprising. Might be a tactic on their part. My take, let the media cheer what they hope is another Trump setback. Let them rally against peace and against American leadership in the world. But behind the scenes, Trump may pull off a peace deal yet. And he might just prove them wrong once again. And that's the angle. Let's discuss today's remarkable series of events with our first guest, Asia politics expert Gordon Chang, author of the 2000 book, Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World, and Harry Kazianis, Director of Defense Studies at the Center for the National Interest. Gordon, your take here.
I think the important thing is that what we heard from the North Koreans after President Trump said he was withdrawing from the summit, because it was a string of unusually conciliatory messages, and then the message that you just read, that is a real indication that the North Koreans think that they've overplayed their hand. They really need a summit with President Trump. They want sanctions relief. They want the United States not to strike their nuclear facilities. They want a counterweight to China. And, of course, they want the legitimization of a meeting with the President of the United States. So I think the North Koreans have really thought maybe we went too far, and we're seeing, I think, a really good series of events that will occur, and there may actually be a summit, Harry. Well, so I think we're going to be on a good path.
Well, Harry, I want to play for you something that Nancy Pelosi said today, which, I mean, we were howling earlier. We're editing this bite. Let's watch.
I think it's a good thing for Kim Jong-un. Here you had a thug, a person who killed all his own family members, a person who runs a police state, being legitimized by the President of the United States. They were on a par with each other. He got global recognition and regard. He's the big winner. And when he got this letter from the President saying, okay, never mind, he must be having a giggle fit.
I have a giggle fit when I try to diagram Nancy's sentences. Harry, go ahead.
I don't even know what to say, Laura. I mean, I think you have to give President Trump a lot of credit here. Think about where we were, Laura, going back to the summer. We were on the brink of nuclear war. Let that set in for a minute. That is millions of people that would have died. The North Koreans every day in their labs, they don't need to sling missiles all across the Pacific, are getting closer to an ICBM. I think that is why they've stalled. And don't worry, Gordon, I don't think there's still going to be a summit. I still think the North Koreans are stalling, and I do not rule out their duplicitousness. We have to remember who we're dealing with.
Yeah.
It's like negotiating with Lucifer.
Yeah, they lie constantly.
Yeah.
They overpromise and underdeliver, or just violate their promises.
Absolutely.
I want to bring in the thing that you and I talk about a lot, Gordon, on radio, which is the role of President Xi of China in all of this, because there were 2 trips by Kim Jong-un to meet with Xi. The president himself mentioned that things seem to have changed from the North Korean perspective after that meeting with Xi. What could be the role that China is playing as this dance continues?
I think what basically Beijing is doing is telling the North Koreans, you don't have to deal with the international community. You don't need to speak with President Trump. You know, if we look back over the last 2 or 3 months, we see China's sanctions busting has really become blatant. When Kim went to Beijing the first time, they allowed North Korean media to show all the gifts that Xi had given to Kim, $394,000 worth of porcelain, silk, jewelry. This was a sanctions violation because you're not allowed to give luxury items to North Koreans. And what President Xi Jinping was saying was, look, I'm violating UN sanctions, but even better, I'm going to give you proof that I'm violating them. And this is really a challenge to the United States. And President Trump met that challenge on Monday and Tuesday by saying, look, I'm calling out the Chinese. I wish he had done that a little bit earlier, because I think we would not have gotten to this place if we had taken on
the president has been, this trade thing is coming into play here. I mean, all these different issues on President Trump's plate, the trade, the tariffs, we're trying to get our manufacturing back, the trade deficit. And I've been warning, you've been warning, do not go soft on China. They will not respond with respect if you go soft on them. The promises, they're the same as North Korea in violating promises to help or do this or that.
Yeah, the most important thing that I heard was a tweet from someone named Laura Ingraham, who said 2 Sundays ago when we heard that ZTE tweet, you said, hold the line, Mr. President. That was, I think, critical. And it did change the president's view on this because we see him backtrack from his initial position on ZTE.
By the way, he could have just given Kim Jong-un like a gift certificate to Shoney's. That would have been good enough. The all-you-can-eat breakfast bar would have been fine for him. Let's talk about what Hillary's top advisor, Jake Sullivan, said today about how this whole thing played out. Let's watch.
Am I glad that Donald Trump didn't go to Singapore and meet with Kim Jong-un and have it all blow up in his face and end in spectacular failure? Yes, I'm glad he didn't do that. On the other hand, should he have not made an impulsive and rash decision with no preparation to announce the summit in the first place? No, he shouldn't have. So he's gotten himself into a situation that was not just predictable, it was predicted.
Oh, of course it's not, because now the summit might be back on. I mean, what success did Hillary Clinton have, as Secretary of State, have with Kim Jong-un?
Zero. I mean,
Zero.
Let's look at the facts here. It's the Obama administration going from 2008 until 2016. Those were the critical years, Laura, where the North Koreans were building their ICBMs, building more chemical weapons.
So hearing him pronounce on what was that, CNN? Pronounce on CNN, well, we're glad he didn't go because he would have done it. Are you kidding me? Like, no one's buying this. We have a possibility of a phased-in, Gordon, correct, denuclearization. Would the Trump administration go for that if it was phased in, where both sides are trying to show good faith? It seems to me that's where we may be going here.
That's where we may be going. Our initial position, though, is that the North Koreans give everything up at the beginning and then we give the benefits at the back end. And we heard Secretary Pompeo talk about that. We heard President Trump talk about it, and of course John Bolton. And this is going to take a little bit of time for us to work out with North Korea. But President Trump has a lot of leverage here. He can use it not only against the North Koreans, but more important, against the Russians and the Chinese. Basically North Korea's big power sponsors. President Trump does that, then yes, I think we get a denuclearized, disarmed North Korea.
And Harry, I always think of Russia too in this scenario. We talk only about China and the Korean Peninsula. Gordon brought up how Russia has continued to, send key goods, fuel and so forth into North Korea. This is where a better relationship with Russia would have served us well, too. Triangulating, the idea that China should call all the shots in the way we deal with North Korea. But now we're like hands off with Russia. We can't have a better relationship with Putin because Adam Schiff might get unhappy. I find this to be ridiculous. We should be working with Putin to the extent that we can, with our eyes wide open, to triangulate on this relationship with China. I think it would be in a much better position.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the Russians could be a spoiler here. Imagine if things get worse in Syria or we have some sort of armed conflict there. The Russians could use the North Koreans as the ultimate bargaining chip. They could give them air defenses. They could give them a ton of military equipment, give them $1 billion to buy arms. We don't need that, to be honest with you. A decent working relationship with Russia is not a bad thing.
We just need it. I mean, and I know, John Bolton and all these guys at the White House, I mean, they feel like they're kind of, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't on this, but it's needed for our national security. And by the way, Putin today said he was unhappy about the cancellation of the summit, if you saw that. Gordon, I want to ask you about the foreign policy elites who laughed at Trump during the campaign when he came out with that list of foreign policy advisors, which included Carter Page and George Papadopoulos. They were not the best people to put on a list, but nevertheless, they mocked Donald Trump. He was inexperienced. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know the ways of the world, and he is new to all this. But I think it's really kind of interesting that a guy who came in with almost no experience in this arena has at least gotten us a lot farther in holding China accountable. Again, we'll have to see where that goes. And maybe actually having this meeting with North Korea that could advance our interests. That's pretty amazing.
The important thing here is that President Trump has taken on these issues and is willing to actually advance American interests. You know, we have the two preceding presidents who sort of just tried to manage things, and because they did that, a lot of problems in the world got worse. The world did not become instantly dangerous when President Trump took the oath of office.
I think it's safer. I think without a doubt it's safer. I don't think it's more dangerous. It was more dangerous when America was getting weaker and weaker and weaker on further and further in debt, which why we have to watch our debt too.
And the reason is, as I said, it didn't become dangerous then. It came dangerous over a long period of time. Trump is dealing with it. He's in a very disadvantageous situation on trade, on North Korea, on Iran, and a lot of other things. And, you know, there's a lot that has to be done and a lot that we don't know, but at least he's trying, and that's critical.
Where do we think China gets the $1 trillion that's going to put in its Made in China 2025 program? Where do we think they got that $1 trillion from our deficit? That's where they got it.
On Tuesday, Trump actually said, look, they just dedicated a new aircraft carrier. We paid for it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's absolutely
right. We have paid for the rise of perhaps a future dominant superpower that eclipses the United States. That should scare every American watching this show tonight. Donald Trump led on that issue, and he cannot let up. Donald Trump said this today, and the question, I think, here is even more important than the answer. Let's watch.
The breakdown of this summit raised the risk of war with North Korea?
Well, we'll see what happens. I hope that we'll continue onward. We'll see. But we are in a very strong position.
Why do they always go the risk? Again, going to Gordon's point, the risk of war. The risk of war was allowing this to happen over the course of the last 20 years.
Laura, there's a deal here, and I don't think it takes somebody with a PhD from Princeton to figure this out. It's step by step. Here it is. North Koreans give up 1 or 2 nuclear weapons. We take off some sanctions. They give up a few chemical weapons. We take off some sanctions. Step by step by step to build trust. If the North Koreans cheat, maximum pressure comes back on. We don't give up an inch. That's how we start this. And the key thing here, the North Koreans give up the goods first. That's how we do this. I think there is a deal to be had here.
He's open to it, clearly. I think he's open to it. He's expressed kind of you got to come out with everything that you want, and then you can back off a little bit. But, Gordon, I think I'm positive about this. I'm very optimistic.
Well, we have the tools, and President Trump can use them. You know, if, for instance, we get a good deal with Kim Jong-un and we can verify it, then we can ignore what the Chinese have been doing. But if we have problems in talking with him, then I think we have to go after the Chinese and we have to go after the Russians.
We can let up on that.
We can do this, Laura. You know, people just sort of assume, oh, what do the Chinese want? What do the North Koreans want? And they always they forget that the United States has the power to push these countries in better directions. You know, this is Reagan. You know, after that period of decline in Carter saying,
America's back. Yeah,
America's back.
And by the way, next time someone asks the president about a Nobel Peace Prize, he should say, look, I don't think I have the talent of Barack Obama to get a Peace Prize. I mean, I wouldn't even engage any more than that. You guys, fantastic discussion, in-depth, serious. Loved it. And by the way, the deep state in deep trouble as charges of political spying continue to emerge. Up next, I'm going to explain how former Obama intel chiefs are trying to bury the lead. and we'll examine how that plot can be foiled. Picking up where we left off in last night's Angle, we're looking into the role former Obama officials played in setting an intel trap against the Trump team. With the dam of evidence now bursting, former Obama officials are trying to muddy the waters by sowing confusion. Here's a case in point.
Is there anything in the dossier that has been disproven?
No, some of it hasn't been proven, and some of it hasn't been. No, I guess the short answer to the question. The salacious stuff, absolutely no corroboration of that to my knowledge.
Wait, nothing's been disproved? How would he know? He hasn't been the director of the National Intelligence for a year and a half. And that's actually the opposite of the truth. None of the wild claims in the dossier have been proven, not publicly. You can bet if any of it were true, it would have been leaked by now. They're always leaking the stuff that they think is bad for Trump. Clapper's statement isn't even accurate. The dossier incorrectly claimed Michael Cohen went to Prague to meet with the Russians. Of course, he's never been to Prague, no public evidence of that, looked at his passport, etc. But never mind the facts. What's really telling about Clapper's remark is that he gives away the deep state strategy. What is it? Which is basically create so much doubt and confusion that Americans give up trying to make sense of any of it. To that end, Clapper and fellow Obama alums are pushing the line that if the dossier can't be disproved, it must be true. Like, when did you stop beating your wife? Well, let's discuss how well that strategy will work in light of all the recent developments with former CIA analyst and counterterror operations officer John Kiriakou, Republican Congressman Steve Russell of the House Oversight Committee, and former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Robert Driscoll. Congressman, this is wild. I mean, the never-ending media appearances by Jim Clapper. We were joking earlier, like, he must be promoting a book, and indeed he is promoting a book. But what's your take on what he said right there?
I think it just shows that this is really a house of cards where they're trying to make something they have no evidence of. And when they talk about people being guilty, it has nothing to do with collusion. I think the American people, they see right through this. It is a continual straw man argument, and they're going to continue to push it every way they can.
That meeting at the White House today with what are they calling it? It's always the Gang of Eight. Why don't we call it the Mob of Eight? The Gang of Eight. It's not clear what documents were actually presented to Devin Nunes or to Trey Gowdy. Were they able to actually look at the documents or not look at the documents?
The details of the meeting will not be released because it was
Mitch McConnell was tight-lipped about this today.
And all of those that were present, as they should be. But I think the bigger concern is that will Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy and others be able to actually get the information, to look at the information without redaction? We see these problems where they will redact things, withholding it from Congress. Well, since 1814 in the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, we have that responsibility. Nothing should be redacted from Congress. They need to get to the facts.
But, Robert, this is what Adam Schiff said about the meeting. Let's watch.
Nothing we heard today has changed our view that there is no evidence to support any allegation that the FBI or any intelligence agency placed a spy in the Trump campaign or otherwise failed to follow appropriate procedures and protocols.
But apparently they actually didn't have the access to the documents that they wanted. At least it's not clear that they did. And so how is he coming out? It's like, well, nothing we saw. Well, apparently they didn't see all the documents. Well, again.
And what I took from what he said was it's a very carefully worded statement. He said no evidence that they placed a spy in the campaign. Now, that could still mean you had a confidential informant contact people in the campaign and record their conversation.
They didn't actually have an office at Trump Tower.
But that means they didn't have an embed in the campaign. Okay, I get that, but I don't think that's necessarily what's of most concern to Congress. So I think what's interesting to me is that Trump could declassify all this stuff himself with the stroke of a pen. And he's actually showing a little bit of deference to DOJ he's almost playing a mediating role between two branches of government rather than acting as the head of the executive branch, saying, look, Congress has got a point. There needs to be more transparency here. I'm not going to force you to disclose everything because there may be some interests that are so strong it's justified.
Honest reasons for redaction.
But things like, I couldn't get over the $70,000 conference room table that Andrew McCabe bought was one of the redactions.
Well, then they get on Ben Carson's wife for the table. She got... Yeah, well, how much was that? That was 11,000. You got a 70. Where do they get their tables?
Well, I mean, trust is really broken
God, they got to go to like the storehouse or whatever. Come on, John. Let's talk to you. Like we've been talking a lot about the overreach of the surveillance state. I did a big piece on this last night. Since 9/11, I guess all these good intentions, we're going to keep the nation safe. Of course, we all want to keep the nation safe.
All of us.
But we have created a surveillance superstate in this country. And I think there are a lot of good people in all these agencies, and they put their lives on the line for us. But people at the top also think they're beyond reproach. And they're so confident that they're right. They want to do what they want to do with impunity.
And that's the deep state. I'm glad that you keep calling it the deep state because it exists. You don't have to call it the deep state. You can call it the federal bureaucracy. But it's there, it's unelected, and it's in power forever. People have to remember that those patriots at the CIA, the FBI, NSA, and elsewhere, many of them came of age and entered into the senior intelligence service during the Obama administration. And for many of them, that's where their loyalties lie. So, yeah, there really is a deep state. The congressman made a very important point, too, and that's about congressional oversight. The CIA just, as a part of its very nature, pushes back on congressional oversight, and they'll provide to Congress as little as they can get away with. That's where Congress has to fight for its rightful role in oversight.
And you were put in jail for 30 months. You leaked the information about the waterboarding, correct? It's a long story, and most of the charges were dropped. One remained. But you felt what happened when you decided to say, this. It didn't seem right to you.
And this is a
like I don't lose sleep about waterboarding. I know a lot of people do.
A lot of people don't.
Like KSM, I don't really care about that.
Disagree. Sure.
But you feel that the way things have developed in this country, with the explosion of the intel agencies, that it's very hard for Congressman Russell and Devin Nunes, Trey Gowdy, and frankly for Democrats, if they were honest, to actually say, okay, what's going on here? Like you got these sites, these rendition sites in Pakistan and everything. What's happening here? And they don't want to say.
Absolutely
that is a natural tension, and it always has been there, but it's worse. The bigger the intel state is, the super state, the harder it is, correct?
Correct. And remember that it got far worse during the Obama administration. John Brennan at the White House had what former colleagues of mine have described as a Nixonian obsession with leaks, where he was the driving force between the 8 Espionage Act cases that the Obama Justice Department brought against people in the intelligence community. That's nearly 3 times the number of Espionage Act cases as all previous presidents combined. And it wasn't really about those individuals. It was about sending a message to the rest of the intelligence community to keep your mouths shut.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
Exactly.
That's a little mafia-esque. Congressman and Robert, I want you both to respond. You can see where this is going. The left is trying to find these side issues to grasp onto. I don't think informants in a campaign or trying to make contact with a campaign is a side issue. I do think it's a side issue when they say, oh, the president's lawyer and the chief of staff were at a meeting for a short period of time. They were freaking out about this today. Let's watch.
I was stunned when I heard that Emmett Flood attended, even if he wasn't there for the classified part of it, that he would even show his presence.
The presence of Emmett Flood, even if it was just to make introductory remarks, clearly now creates a conflict.
What we saw in that meeting today was improper, and it was unprecedented, and it does risk undermining parts of the Mueller probe.
I don't know if these people know anything about the law. Emmett Flood was there to say, we're here. We want to help. We want transparency. We're cooperating with and want to take a positive role in this. And they stayed apparently just for a short period of time. They were gone. Congressman.
It's the typical Pravda-like playbook. Admit nothing, deny everything, make counter-accusations. Put up some shiny object, distract on the facts.
Did you say Pravda-like playbook?
Yes, I did.
I love it. Isn't that fun? Robert.
Again, it's kind of commonplace. I mean, the president, again, is playing a mediating role in this, and I think all that happened was Flood was there at the beginning, said, the president really wants you guys to release as much as you can.
Transparency.
And then they walked out prior to the classified portion of the briefing, is my understanding.
It's like they're making it like Emmett. They're making it like Emmett directed the meeting, and he was like, okay, calling on you and you and you. That's like how it went down.
In any government thing.
It's Why?
I mean, you have to pick a branch, right? And the people that are from DOJ work for the president. And so it's not inappropriate for the president and the White House counsel to say prior to the meeting, you work for us. Here's where the boss wants to go with this. He wants maximum transparency while still protecting what you think you need.
Robert, I got to ask you this. What is the likelihood that only one informant, this hapless helper, apparently this professor, is the only person who was tasked with some type of outreach to the Trump campaign? Doesn't that seem odd that it would be just one guy? I mean, maybe it was, but that's kind of that's just lame. If they're really wanting to get answers, just one guy.
The Australian contact was the one that always was a question to me, because I mean, I've been in a lot of bars with a lot of people who've said a lot of stupid stuff, and the notion that I would run to the FBI or run to an intelligence agency based on a late-night conversation with somebody in a bar that I allegedly
with Papadopoulos? Is that the Papadopoulos meeting?
In London. I mean, seems kind of strange to me. I mean, maybe that is totally innocent, and he just has a hair trigger for when to run to an intelligence agency. But I don't think that's common behavior, and that might be worthy of taking a look at.
Well, I just think they have to bring more people to testify in Capitol Hill. We're almost out of time, but I'd bring more people back. Susan Rice has got to come back. I'd bring all these people back. I'd bring Loretta Lynch. I'd bring that Oleg Deripaska, that Russian billionaire that they were making contact with, trying to get him to agree to this collusion narrative. He left him out of his apartment in New York. I'd get all these people back. We're not getting the answers we deserve. And bring the people back to testify. They don't want to testify. That tells us a lot. Samantha Power, bring her in. She never testified at all, I don't believe. Right, Congressman? I don't believe she was ever up there. Fantastic segment. Oh, we could do the whole hour with you. Three brilliant men. Players are already plotting to get around the NFL's new ban on the national anthem protest. You're not going to want to miss this. Of course, the resistance lives. Yesterday, the NFL announced it will require players to either stand on the field or remain in the locker room during the playing of the national anthem. And today, numerous reports said that instead of kneeling during the anthem, NFL players are now already planning new ways to protest. The ever-patriotic editorial board of the New York Times helpfully suggested players raise black-gloved fists in the air. President Trump thinks it's important that all players respect the anthem.
I don't think people should be staying in locker rooms, but still, I think it's good. You have to stand proudly for the national anthem. Well, you shouldn't be playing. You shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country. You have to stand proudly for the national anthem. And the NFL owners did the right thing if that's what they've done.
Love it or leave it, baby. I'm sorry. I thought that was hilarious. Should all alternative player protests be tolerated? Let's debate that with former NFL star, author of the new book, Why I Stand, From Freedom to the Killing Fields of Socialism, Burgess Owens, and Democratic strategist Antoine Seawright. Let's go to you, Antoine. Look, I think a lot of players are kind of tired of this whole controversy. I bet if you really talk to them, they just want to play football, enjoy the game that they, most of them are paid a decent amount of money to play. But nevertheless, it's bubbled up again. Why a new round of protests to drag the NFL through yet another season of discontent?
Well, I think that most people have forgotten why we even having this conversation. The truth of the matter is this started because there were NFL players who believed that at the hands of law enforcement, black and brown people in this country have been mistreated, mishandled, and killed, and they feel like it's wrong. And they have the ability, based on one of the hallmarks of our democracy, to peacefully protest, and they started this movement. That has gotten lost in the conversation. Instead, the conversation has been about President Trump. Instead of focusing on being president of the United States, he wants to tell NFL players what they do and how they should do their jobs. And,
well, I mean, they have an opinion.
To,
I mean, I don't know. I think that's fair, Antoine. I mean, NFL players have their opinion, and the president is like, you should stand for the anthem. I mean, everyone's kind of having a give and take here. And when you're a football player, you're not. You also are subject to the rules of the NFL. The owners do write the rules. The Players Association has their say. And Burgess Owens, I mean, obviously as a former player yourself, you know the rules of the game are the rules of the game, and the owners set the rules, and they were getting tired of the lower attendance and the public upset over this, even though, as you've pointed out, they're trying to go global.
Can I just say something real quick? I'm going to bring a different flavor to this thing, guys, because it takes a lot of hard work to take 60 years of building a brand the way the NFL has done, 14 million fans, to mess it up within 2 years where they have. It either is based on total incompetence, feckless leadership, or it's done on purpose. And I think it's done on purpose, to be honest with you. You have a commission that's been paid $40 million a year. 90% of that is based on growth incentive. What we're looking at is elitist globalists. Their focus right now, NFL does not mind this chaos. They don't mind demeaning the American flag, tarnish the American brand, because they're looking at international. There's 10 international countries out there, China, France, Germany, that could care less about the American way. And that's where they see their
Then why would they change the rule, though, Burgess? Why would they change the rule if they're worried about the global brand? You're right. Over in Europe, they don't care if people stand for the national anthem, or in China, they're not going to care about that. But the base of the money is still in the United States.
Well,
that's where they make their bread and butter, correct?
This is the deal. The rule says very simply this: you can stay in the locker room if you want to protest, which you mean you're protesting, or if you're standing on the sideline, the team pays the fine. So we're keeping this whole conversation. We're still talking about this. NBA has not been talking about this for the last 2 years, because they made a decision that their players will respect the corporation, they will respect the flag. So
yeah, that's a good point.
You don't see anything happening in the NBA. But we still have this conversation.
Antoine, that's a great point, that the NBA doesn't have this problem because they have a rule that you stand for the anthem and you respect the playing of the national anthem, correct? I mean, there was a great piece on the ESPN about this, that the NBA hasn't gotten into this problem.
Laura and Burgess, a little note of fact, the same day this ruling came down by NFL owners, by the way, who did not have an NFLPA representative in the room when they made this decision, the same day this came down, a video was released by the Milwaukee Police Department in which an NBA player was tased for over a parking violation. Keep in mind, we're having this conversation again because African Americans and black and brown people are 5 times more likely to be injured or killed at the hands of law enforcement.
Antoine, what does that have to do with a football game?
Yeah,
and
has a lot to do with this. Lord, these people are
then write an op-ed, Antoine.
Football players.
Right, write an op-ed. Go. A lot of them volunteer and have great charities. That's fantastic. But people tune in. Now, Antoine, hold on. People tune in to watch the game. They don't care about your political views. I hate to tell you, they don't care, Burgess.
Well, there's something the left does very well. It's called use, abuse. It's something the left does: use, abuse, and discard. And what the NFL plan is doing right now is using the American. Antoine, how about respect, my friend? Why don't you listen for a few minutes? What the NFL is doing is using the American fan to become billionaires. They're then abusing them with every single Sunday sharing this ideology of Marxism, socialism, and they're going to discard them for international foreign fans. At the end of the day, they're looking at billions of dollars in a new market, and all this is doing with the new plan, it keeps this whole thing alive. We will be talking about this for the next 2 years while players are deciding how they're going to demonstrate, and we'll be talking about the international fans will see this.
Antoine.
Burgess, let me remind you, you look like me, my friend. You look like me.
And I'm American. I look like a lot of other Americans. I am an American first, my friend.
Are you going to let me finish my point, or are you going to try to talk over me? People who look like us have it 5 times more likely to experience being mishandled at the hands of law enforcement than any other race in this country.
75%.
That's why these players are taking a kneel. That's why they're taking a stand. And I commend them for the effort. I'm sorry, this president tried to make this a red meat campaign issue
that America comes first, and we should be proud of who we are.
All right, guys.
How about we tell our kids to be proud of who we are?
Yeah, guys. And look, I think we all want things to be better. We want people to have jobs. We want families to be able to stay together. We want police to respect everybody. I think they generally do, but there are mistakes made. I think not a lot of this is going to be solved by taking a knee or wearing a black armband. But look, people can do what they want, and I think the league is going to have to decide for itself how it works out over the next year. All right, we appreciate it. Thanks, guys. We're out of time, but fantastic conversation. Nancy Pelosi is apparently not ready for prime time. CNN gives her a town hall to try to boost Democratic fortunes, but it backfires big time. Stay there. Told you, Democrats are beginning to panic as that blue wave starts evaporating before their very eyes. Back in December, Real Clear Politics Average gave Dems a 13-point lead in the generic congressional vote. People were panicking here in Washington. As of Tuesday, that lead in the midterm elections was down to just 4%. Democrats responded last night by rolling out their secret weapon. It's a new person, Nancy Pelosi. But she kind of stumbled and bumbled her way through a primetime town hall and was confronted about her infamous crumbs remark.
When the tax and jobs bill was passed, I gave my employees a $1,000 bonus plus a 5% pay increase that they appreciated very much. Add to that, they reduced withholding from their paychecks, and it turned to a noticeable increase in income. It certainly was not crumbs to them.
And let me congratulate you and commend you, because you're a rarity. Not many business, only a small percentage of businesses shared their tax advantage with their employees.
Good luck selling that story, Nancy. Let's discuss this, how well this innovative strategy might work with pollster Frank Luntz. Frank, it was a flop not only in the ratings, but substantively last night for Pelosi. She was bombarded with questions and comments from people who didn't share her outlook on a variety of issues, including Russia and even the age of the Democratic leadership. How do things stand today?
Well, I've been tracking this on a weekly basis going back now for a year and a half, and these are the best numbers that the GOP has had in the last year. One of the reasons is that women, working women, women with children, have begun to leave the Democratic Party. It's not that they're pro-Republican, but what they see among the Democrats is the same kind of negativity that turned them off in previous elections. Second is that Nancy Pelosi is simply the least popular, credible figure in the Democratic Party right now. She's more popular than Hillary Clinton or Chuck Schumer. And quite frankly, if the Republicans could find some way to engineer a vote of who would be Speaker of the House in January of 2019, if they can engineer that vote, I'd be prepared to say right now that the Republicans would keep the majority, because there are so many people out there, swing voters, who do not want Pelosi as Speaker, that one action would make a difference. And third, and this is a warning, though, which is that there is still an intensity difference between Democrats and Republicans. A lot of Democrats can't wait to vote in November. Republicans are still less energized. If the GOP can get a Pelosi vote and energize their base, then they will keep the majority.
I think the I word, Frank, is a big motivator for Republicans, and I think that is going to intensify over the fall. The more we hear congressmen like Congressman Al Green and others talk about, we get the House, articles of impeachment are going to be, we're going to hit that right away. I think a lot of these Republicans out there and middle of the road people see the economy going up. They don't want to throw us backward. And I think that's going to be a big plus for the Republicans, along with just the economy, unless somehow it craters.
The phrase, don't turn back the clock, would work this time. But also, the Democrats have not offered anything in the alternative. It's always been why Donald Trump is wrong, why House Republicans are wrong. And the fact is, voters do want to vote for something, even if they're angry, even if they're frustrated. They need a reason to vote for a political party. It's why the GOP did the contract with America in 1994. That's what made the difference then. You don't hear anything from the Democrats
Nothing
today.
Substantive. In fact, one of the folks at the town hall in the audience brought up the other issue I think is hurting Democrats, which is the Russia obsession. Let's watch.
If Trump actually colluded with the Russians, why isn't he found guilty of it after a year of investigation? Wouldn't there be some type of concrete proof by now?
Well, you know that there is an investigation going on under Counsel Mueller, and that is where we wouldn't have any idea of what's going on in that, and nor should we know what's going on in that investigation. But it takes time.
Frank.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. The fact is, they care about their taxes, they care about their paychecks, they care about their jobs, they care about the economy. And when you have a 3.9% unemployment rate, actually, the truth is Republicans should be beating the Democrats right now, but it's partially a communications challenge. And frankly, the media does not give what the Republicans have done over the last year and a half. They don't get the full play of GOP successes. And that's one of the reasons why they're still down in the generic ballot.
Thanks so much, Frank. Great analysis. Now, stay right there, because you don't want to miss this. In just a minute, a selfless woman who will remind you why you are so proud to be an American and why we have so much as Americans today, this Memorial Day holiday, to be grateful for.